Chaos ensues as Zelensky decimates Putin's fleet in the Sea of Azov and pushes Russian logistics into a crisis that has already reached the ports and is really leaving Putin unable to control the situation. Ukrainian drones have hit oil tankers, cargo ships, tugboats, and support vessels used by Moscow to supply occupied Crimea and keep oil flowing while evading sanctions. The commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Brovd, stated that 28 vessels were attacked early Saturday morning, including 21 oil tankers, and that the total for the week came to 76 maritime targets struck. The pressure was so strong that Russia temporarily suspended navigation through the Domazov Canal and halted new passage requests through the Kerch Strait, an essential link between the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. At the same time, Putin requested urgent subsidies to bring down fuel prices in Crimea, where local authorities admit to shortages, rationing, and blackouts. Zelensky responded by creating a special command to expand long-range attacks against Russian energy and logistics. What was Ukraine able to paralyze? Why did Putin rush to announce aid? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward and no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The new offensive gained strength for 6 consecutive days. According to Brovd, 28 vessels received 73 confirmed hits during the operation early this Saturday morning. Including previous actions, Ukrainian forces claim to have attacked 76 Russian vessels between July 6 and 11th. The count includes ships that were hit more than once and does not mean that all of them sank. The main effect was to take vessels out of circulation, force repairs, increase the risk for the crews, and turn each new fuel trip to Crimea into a much more dangerous operation. On Friday, Reuters confirmed 3 vessels attacked, among them 10 oil tankers. In Saturday's update, Brovd announced 21 oil tankers and 7 cargo or support ships hit during the night. The targets were not at sea by chance. The Ukrainian General Staff states that some of the tankers were carrying fuel for Russian military units and also transporting oil and derivatives along routes used to circumvent international sanctions. This network has become known as Putin's shadow fleet. Moscow uses vessels with different flags, registrations, and international safe havens. This network has become known as Putin's shadow fleet. To maintain energy sales, generate revenue, and supply the Brovd, which Brovd does not process oil. Brovd summed up the situation by saying that the Russian shadow fleet is shrinking. The Blockade A would have meant you. Next, Russian border guards suspended passage through the navigable canal that connects the Don River to the Sea of Azov. Companies were also warned that new requests to cross the Kerch Strait would not be accepted starting at 6:10 p.m. on July 10th, with no announced date for resumption. Rostov and Krasnodar are among the largest grain-producing regions in Russia. Wheat traded in Europe rose by up to 4% due to fears of a prolonged disruption. The ports of Rostov, Azov, and Taganrog were directly exposed to the crisis because they rely on regional shipping to move wheat, fuel, and industrial cargo. Ukraine managed to interfere with a route that Moscow considered protected. The Sea of Azov had served as an internal Russian corridor since the occupation of territories in the region. Now, every vessel entering this area needs to consider the risk of new attacks carried out by Ukrainian unmanned systems units. Occupied Crimea felt the pressure even before the maritime blockade. Sergei Aksyonov, head of the Moscow-backed administration, acknowledged on July 8 that the energy situation remained tense and that on some days there would be no fuel available for sale to the public. The peninsula had already imposed rationing after Ukrainian attacks compromised supply routes and electrical substations. In Sevastopol, local authorities said that the region was receiving, on average, only a third of the fuel needed per day. Putin responded by asking the Ministry of Finance for quick payments to reduce the burden of high fuel prices on the residents of Crimea. The political directive reveals the extent of the pressure. The Russian government promises to control the peninsula, but needs to resort to subsidies to prevent the crisis from falling directly on the population. During the same period, the Russian government banned diesel exports to protect the domestic market. Reuters calculations indicate that domestic gasoline production fell to about 65% of capacity after successive attacks on refineries and energy facilities. He took advantage of the impact and on July 10 signed a decree creating a special long-range command within the armed forces. The new structure is expected to concentrate all available resources to reduce Russia's ability to continue the war. The measure organizes, under a single command, attacks against refineries, terminals, depots, pipelines, and maritime routes. On the same Friday, it was announced, still not announced, the rehabilitation decree, rehabilitation for today. Still in July, it was in the government plan, the proposal that Social Security came in the yo in July. The Russian The Ust-Luga complex
in the Leningrad region.
Ust-Luga complex in the Leningrad region.
The Ust-Luga complex in the Leningrad region. Thank you.
in addition to the oil terminal and storage facility in Rostov. This campaign was not limited to the coast. Ukrainian drones also reached the Omsk refinery in Siberia, about 2,700 kilometers from territory controlled by Kyiv. Other attacks were reported against facilities in Tatarstan, Saratov, and Bashkortostan. The Kremlin responded with a threat of escalation. Dmitry Peskov stated that the attacks would not bring peace any closer and could lead Russia to expand its so-called security zone. Sources close to the Russian government told Reuters that Putin continues to reject calls for negotiation and that Ukrainian pressure has strengthened his decision to keep fighting. Ukraine is taking advantage of exactly this division, using cheaper unmanned systems to force Moscow to spend much more on protecting ships, ports, and facilities. Russia still does not have the capability to respond with heavy attacks. This Saturday, it launched 6 ballistic missiles, 6 cruise missiles, and 121 drones against Ukraine, leaving people dead and injured in Odessa, Kyiv, and Kharkiv.
Third, we need to support Ukraine more, increase the pressure on Russia, and ensure that the only legitimate winner of this war will be Ukraine.
Zelensky once again called on allies for more air defense, because the lack of interceptors for the Patriot systems continues to leave cities exposed. The license announced by Donald Trump for Ukraine to produce Patriot interceptors could strengthen this protection, while the new long-range command increases offensive pressure. Putin now faces a campaign that simultaneously targets ships, fuel, exports, refineries, and the very sustainment of Crimea. Zelensky is betting that the rising cost will force the Kremlin to choose between negotiating or watching the gradual reduction of the structure used to finance and supply the invasion. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially using the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel focused on keeping you truthfully informed. Your contribution helps us keep going.